So there's a really amazing and extremely difficult challenge in Final Fantasy VII Remake that you can only take part in after already finishing the main story, unlocking the hard difficulty as well as unlocking a few other challenges along the way. But this opens up access to a secret boss that also provides you the strongest item in the game, which is the Gorer Damarang accessory. This is gonna pretty much let you start any fight with a full limit gauge break, and you're gonna be able to use it right away to take down any enemy. So in this video I'm going to go over everything you need to know about this fight, how to unlock it, and also how to best prepare for it. So let's jump right in it, and as always a thumbs up on this video would be super appreciated. Anyway, be warned that before proceeding there's gonna be some slight spoilers in this video. Of course this is a very secret and very endgame boss, so proceed at your own will. But otherwise you get to unlock the Shinra Combat Simulator, the second one, in chapter 17 after already finishing the main story, after finishing all of the Colosseum challenges in chapter 9 and 14, all the 20 battle intel reports for Chadley, and you're also going to unlock these 13 challenges in that Shinra Combat Simulator. And after finishing all of these as well, there's going to be the final 14 one, which is called 3-person team versus top secrets, where you will have to fight pretty much the toughest bosses in the game, including Shiva, Fat Chocobo, Leviathan, Bahamut, and the final 5th secret boss called Pride and Joy. Now my party composition was Cloud, Barret, and Aerith, of course all level 50 with the best items in the game. Again, if you want to see the best items, go ahead and check out the video before this for a nice list, but mainly I needed Barret and Aerith for those range capabilities, and yeah, that meant that I had to exclude Tifa. Cloud was kinda like a hybrid between spellcaster and also like melee damage dealer, so I used the Buster Sword for that since it provides bonuses to both melee damage as well as magic. Barret using the Big Bertha to be a tank as well as kinda like a support, so he can heal himself and the party without using any MP while still doing damage. And finally Aerith using the Mithril Rod, the main spellcaster and the primary damage dealer, since she's gonna be casting some really high powerful damaging spells. Now as far as the most important materia goes, this is what I've used. 2 HP materias for all of these 3 characters. Reason being, of course, that you will need at least 8000 HP on every single one of them, otherwise some ultimates from these bosses can pretty much fully wipe out your party, especially Bahamut, which is absolutely crazy. Revival materia is also very important. I have equipped one on every single one of these characters. In case one of them dies, any of the other 2 can resurrect them. Of course I also used the main spells over here, which are Fire and Lightning, so both Aerith and Cloud have this, and especially so since most of these bosses are weak to one of these in one way or another. I've also used the First Strike materia fully upgraded for both Cloud and Aerith, so that I can immediately cast spells as soon as the fight starts to immediately put pressure on the enemies. Also Steadfast block for both Cloud and Barret, very useful since it lets you absorb more damage when you're blocking, and it also increases your ATB gauge much faster when you're blocking, so definitely very useful. On Aerith, very important to have Magnify plus healing so that you can provide healing party-wide as well as regenerate. Barret has Chakra and Prayer. He doesn't have any healing capabilities because these are provided by Chakra and Prayer. So Chakra is his self-sustain, it doesn't cost any MP, and for just 1 ATB charge he can pretty much heal himself for about 4,000 to 5,000 HP, while Prayer lets him cast a heal on the entire party for just 2 ATB charges, and again not consuming any MP. But now that we've reached this point, let's go over each of the fights and kind of break them down to make them much easier. So first we have Shiva, which is weak to fire, so in this case, since she doesn't really immediately cast anything, what I did is I precasted Firaga on both Aerith and Cloud as soon as the fight starts, as well as the triangle attack for Barret to immediately put the boss under pressure and get that stagger meter up as much as possible. With Aerith, what I'm trying to do over here is to cast Arcane Ward as fast as possible, because this lets my attack spells to be cast twice when casting them within this ward right here. So that's why I'm trying to put it down and then immediately cast another fire attack to do all of that. Now, a few of the attacks for Shiva that you have to keep in mind, and probably the most important right here, is the Frost Familiars. These are these kind of floating sprites that she casts all the time, but they pretty much block any incoming spell damage. So the best way to take them down is to actually cast spells on it, and the best way to do so is to cast the lower level fire attacks from within the arcane ward that Aerith has casted. And I've done this both with Cloud and her so that I can cast 4 basic fire attacks and take down those familiars as quickly as possible and open the boss up to my other bigger attacks. And once that was possible, I just, sustained that damage, tried to build up those ATB charges, and once those familiars were down, I tried to pretty much unleash everything, including Firaga with both Aerith and Cloud from inside the arcane ward, and also the Barret Focus Strike with 2 ATP charges, and this immediately staggers the boss, where you can just go in and absolutely destroy her. If you time all of this correctly, by the time she wakes up, you can immediately put her under pressure again if you precast something right before she goes into like her normal mode. Anyway, just following those patterns as I was saying and doing all of that fire attacks on her eventually is gonna stun her well enough for you to go in and deal all the damage in the world and take her down in no time. Now this brings us to the second fight, which is the Fat Chocobo. It's pretty much the same tactic as Shiva, as in start the fight with 2 Firagas on Cloud and Aerith, as well as Triangle on Barret, but this time around there's not going to be any sprites blocking your spells, so the boss is way easier to actually stagger. So in this case, just keep constant pressure with heavy spells and damage abilities to stagger the boss as fast as possible, and once you get him into the stagger, do the infinite and attack with Cloud, since this can deal like 10,000 damage during that stagger, so it's absolutely amazing to use it like that. And also those double Firagas with Aerith from inside the arcane ward. Now eventually, if you do this correctly, you can pretty much put the boss under pressure as soon as he comes out of the previous stagger and back to back stagger him again. Now if that's not gonna be the case, there's a few things that you need to keep in mind. First of all, he does summon ads, but for the most part I've just ignored these. There's a few that can cast fire, but none of them seem to be able to interrupt my attacks, or if they do, that happens very rarely. The boss also has an attack called Bomb Away, which is, I'm not really sure if it's the ultimate, but it throws a bomb that explodes after a certain time, and it can deal like 5,000 damage with ease, so try to kill him before that happens. And he also does this spinning bounce attack where he just jumps all over the arena, staggers you and your characters, and it just deals a ton of damage. So yeah, try to stagger him during this phase, since that can be pretty easy. One thing that you should be careful about here is the enemy that casts Doom and Gloom. It's that enemy that can one-shot any character in the game despite how much HP he might have. So this is pretty much a DPS and stagger race. Try to get as much DPS and prevent any of this happening, as this is basically the strategy over here. Now the third one is gonna be the Leviathan boss, and there's not gonna be any precast over here because he starts with his own beam as soon as the fight starts, and he's gonna be able to precast it much faster than your characters. So what I did in this case is, yeah, just dodge that, block it, and only after that start casting. His weakness is of course lightning, so try to cast as much lightning on him as possible. This is gonna increase his stagger meter. Block every single attack that you see him charging in. Most of his attacks are really easy to telegraph and block, since they take quite a bit of time to kind of charge in, and once they do an attack on your current character and you get to block that, quickly switch to another character and deal as much damage as possible to the boss, since most of these attacks are, pretty long in animation, so the boss is kind of locked in those animations in that amount of time, giving you plenty of room to deal damage and maybe even heal a character if it happens to drop low on HP. Some of these moves that are really annoying are the fact that he kind of flies over the platform. He can also charge in the platform, so once we see him do that, block immediately and switch switch to a different character to deal that damage. He also uses a very long cast on Aquatic Focus. This is an ability where he kind of stays in and charges it for about 5 to 10 seconds, giving you plenty of room to go in, deal as much damage as possible, and even stagger him. And this is gonna give you all the room in the world to deal as much damage as possible. Eventually, once he reaches low HP, he's gonna start casting these tornadoes that don't really seem to despawn, and he also starts flying over the platform. But this stage is much easier than you might think, because he's not gonna be doing all those attacks that can interrupt your characters. But in this phase, he's going to be out of reach for melee attacks, which means both Barret and Aerith are gonna be perfectly suited for this situation, as they both have regular attacks being range as well as abilities. So definitely something that is gonna heavily benefit your party in this stage. Eventually you can stagger him again, take him down. It's gonna be pretty easy to achieve that, but again a little bit tougher to actually stagger him compared to the previous two bosses I was talking about. Now this brings us of course to Bahamut, which is by far the strongest of the strongest, and just an all-around annoying fight. He's also kind of like a bitch, because at 50% he summons Ifrit, so he kind of has this combo which is really annoying. But he's by far the toughest encounter, doesn't really have any real weaknesses. It's really easy to stagger, so the best way over here is to sustain your party, have at least 75% HP all the time, because you never know when he can take down any of the party members. And yeah, just use that regen with Aerith on all of your characters, and try to keep Barret as the main tank over here. So try to switch to him as often as possible to attract all of those attacks. Now in terms of attacks, he has this multiple melee slash where he just goes in and does this rampage and flurry of attacks. So try to pre-block when you see him charging that in, as this is gonna, you know, mitigate all that damage and also increase your ATB so that you can further use spells and abilities. He also does this body spin that can be blocked in a very similar way to the previous one, but he has an unblockable attack called Umbral Strike. These two purple bombs that he throws, and when they explode they throw back your character. So at this point switch to a different one and try to heal that character in case it goes low on HP, or otherwise just go in and do as much damage as possible. Anyway, by far the most threatening attack in the game is Bahamut's ultimate, which kinda starts from the very beginning of the fight. So during the fight you will see some numbers popping up next to his name, like 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. When it reaches 1, soon after that he's gonna start charging his ultimate. You're not gonna be able to do anything during that mini cutscene, and it can deal a ton of damage. That's why I said just sustain your party with at least 75% HP, and try to mitigate as much of that as possible, because it can one-shot literally any party out there if it doesn't have enough HP. So yeah, this is where that revival materia comes in use. If all of the other party members dies but Barret survives, he can resurrect everybody, and it's definitely very useful for that. But as you slowly progress through the fight, bring him down to about 50%, he's going to go into his bitch mode where he starts summoning Ifrit. So from this point on you have two options: either use limit breaks in case you have them by this point on Ifrit to take him down as fast as possible and then concentrate on Bahamut or Bahamut, whatever his name is, or otherwise, if you're like me, just continue focusing on the main boss and continue Ifrit, since he's pretty much a nuisance and doesn't seem to be doing as much damage as the main boss anyway. So that's what I did in my case. I've also summoned Shiva, by the way. I thought that she would be useful against Ifrit with her ice attacks. I'm not really sure if that was the case, but she dealt some really nice damage and staggered the boss eventually. By about 35 to 40%, the boss was already in almost his final sequence before his ultimate, and by this time both Cloud as well as Barret had their limit breaks already activated. So I've used the level 2 versions of them on the boss, and of course this also increased that stagger meter by a ton, but also dealt a ton of damage, and I was quite lucky with this one. So it was definitely a ton of damage. And after these attacks, also Shiva came in. She was about to despawn, so she casted her ultimate attack for another like 5000 HP, and the boss was already under pressure, almost staggered completely, but By the time I got a chance to do that, he was already down, and all was left was poor old Ifrit, who, yeah, he got that ass whooped, I'm not gonna lie. Anyway, this brings us to the fifth and final fight, the one against Pride and Joy, the secret boss at the end of this. He's actually the easiest fight out here, probably not the easiest, but the second one after the fat Chocobo, but he's definitely super easy to take on. So his weakness is definitely lightning damage, but he also has certain parts you can attack, including his feet and his arms, and attacking his feet with lightning damage destroys them extremely fast. Also, the triple slash for Cloud is very good at taking them down, and this is gonna pretty much incapacitate him for a few seconds, giving you plenty of room to fully stagger him or taking down other parts, and back to back just stagger him all the time and deal as much damage on him as possible. There's not really many attacks that you have to be careful about, at least not that I've encountered. I mean, he has some really easy to telegraph like beam attacks even in the beginning of the fight, so don't try to precast anything right then. It's also really easy to telegraph all of his other attacks since they have a longer wind up, and it's easy to see when those happen, and even if you don't, those beam charge ups are easy to spot and you can quickly move away since they don't track your characters, and from here on it's just a matter of dealing as much damage as possible while moving away and not staying in the line of fire, and eventually you're gonna take this down as well. And from this point on, it's pretty much done. The challenge is done, and congratulations, you've completed the toughest challenge in Final Fantasy VII Remake and got the best item in the game, the Gorer Damarang, and an achievement over there as well. But this is pretty much it with the entire guide. I really wish I could have made this shorter, but unfortunately this was the shortest version of this video that I was able to make, so that's pretty much it. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video, as always, a thumbs up on it would be super appreciated. Thank you so much for watching, and peace.